Australian households have been quietly leading a solar revolution. We've got more rooftop solar per capita than almost anywhere else on the planet, and for years, feeding that energy back into the grid meant lower power bills for homeowners and cleaner energy for everyone. But that success has created a new problem. So much solar is now flooding the grid during the day that networks are struggling to cope. Energy retailers have slashed feed-in tariffs to almost nothing in response, and in some cases, they're talking about making them negative, so you'll pay to put your excess energy back into the grid. Meanwhile, despite this oversupply of energy, the average Australian household is still paying over $2,000 a year in electricity bills. So what's the solution? It's not using less solar, it's using it better. A home battery like the Anker Sollex X1 we're installing today means the energy your panels generate during the day gets stored and used by your household when you actually need it. In the evening, during a blackout, or when grid prices peak. You stop giving your power away for free, your bills drop, and by reducing what gets pushed back to the already strained grid, you're actually helping stabilize the network for everyone. Our last quarterly power bill came in at just over $800, and that's not unusual for us. Between the servers that run 24/7, multiple 3D printers, editing workstations, and all the gear that keeps this channel running, we're not exactly a light using household by any stretch. But it's not just the cost that's an issue with our energy usage. We're in an area that gets semi-regular outages, and with a 6-month-old at home now, losing power in the middle of a Melbourne summer feels like a much bigger deal than it used to. A solar system had been on our radar since we bought this place. We'd already done the research, gotten a couple of quotes, and were pretty close to pulling the trigger on a system when Anker reached out about their Solix X1. We'd already ruled out a battery because of cost for the time being, but when Anker offered to provide one of their batteries to go with our solar system, we couldn't really say no. The Solix X1 is a modular home battery system, which just means it's designed to be easy to scale. Each lithium iron phosphate battery module has a 5 kilowatt-hour capacity and can be stacked, I think, 5 high. In my case, I have 7 battery units for a total of 35 kilowatt hours, which is as much as Anker would give me. If it all goes well and I'm happy with the system, I'll probably add a couple of modules down the road. Now, I want to be upfront here. Anker wasn't the only brand that got in touch with us. There were several battery providers who offered to work with us, and we took our time looking at what each one brought to the table. Ultimately, we chose the Anker Sollex X1 because when we looked at our specific use case and especially the space we had available, it made the most sense for our application, especially with their new PowerDock Pro. The PowerDock Pro allows us to combine the output of both our power modules to let us run our entire house with really fast changeover times. With Anker's other partial backup solution, you couldn't use power from both power modules at the same time, meaning you only had 6 kilowatts of available power in an outage. With the PowerDock Pro, we can use up to 12 kilowatts without issue. Another thing we loved about the Solix X1 system is that the battery and power modules are incredibly slimline. They're only 150 millimeters deep, which is perfect for the space we have available on the shaded side of our house. The battery modules just stack on top of one another, and in our case, there's a power module, which is Anker's name for their hybrid inverter, installed atop of each battery stack. If you're not aware of what an inverter does, it handles converting the DC side of the system, the batteries and the solar panels, to AC, and AC from the grid back to DC when it's needed. That makes our system a DC coupled system. Generally, you want your battery to be installed away from too much solar heat. In our case, that means installing the batteries and inverter stack here on the shaded side of the house. Fortunately, the Solix system is designed for this kind of install location in mind, hence the slimline packaging. This was a huge factor for us, as installing the system on the other side of the house would have meant installing some sun protection, like a little roof shade, which would have been visible from the street and a little bit of an eyesore. Like I mentioned, we have 35 kilowatt hours of batteries in total, broken down into 5 kilowatt hour modules, 2 4.8 kilowatt inverters, a PowerDock Pro, and about 11 kilowatts of solar panels, which is about as much as we can fit on our little house. The installation was relatively straightforward. The guys that did the work did a great job and had both the solar and the batteries installed in a day. I'm no expert on the installation side, but the install crew had really good things to say about how the Anker units go together. The installers were stuck getting it installed and set up in the rain for part of the day, but the Anker system has an IP66 outdoor rating, so it's built for poor conditions, as you'd expect. The installer did have a bit of a problem getting the system commissioned via the Anker installer app, but he was on the phone with some of Anker's engineers getting it resolved while he was here, and after a couple of hours it was all resolved, and I'm told that the bug in the app that caused the issues has been fixed. So your installer shouldn't experience the same problem. The Solix system can automatically integrate with providers like Glowbird and Amber straight out of the box, and this is one of the things I'm kind of most excited about with this whole setup. Now, you may already know this, but a lot of people don't really understand how a home battery interacts with the grid. So feel free to skip this if you already know. If not, stick around, you might find it interesting. The basic idea is this. Electricity prices on the wholesale market are not fixed. They fluctuate throughout the day based on demand. At certain times, usually overnight when nobody needs the energy, or during the middle of the day when solar generation is sky high, prices drop significantly. At other times, typically early evening when everyone gets home from work and starts cooking dinner or having a shower, they spike. With the right provider and a battery, you can actually play that to your advantage. When prices are low, you charge the battery. When prices are high, you discharge it and sell it back to the grid, or just run the house off of it instead of paying peak rates. Done well, it turns your battery from a passive backup device into something that's actively working to reduce your bills around the clock. We'll do a dedicated video that'll go into a bit more detail about that sort of stuff a little bit down the track, and once we've had some time to see how it performs in practice. As I mentioned earlier, Australia is one of the highest adopters of rooftop solar in the world, and it makes sense. We get a lot of sun here and we like our air conditioning. Take what I said about selling energy when prices are high and buying when it's low automatically, and expand it to tens of thousands of homes all doing the same thing. Every time wholesale prices spike, thousands of batteries automatically export energy into the grid, which increases supply, meets demand, and brings the price back down. Every time prices drop, those same batteries charge up, which increases demand and nudges prices back up. In theory, with enough batteries in enough homes, wholesale energy prices would start to flatten out. The wild swings become smaller and smaller because there's always a distributed network of storage ready to respond in either direction. It's one of those things that sounds almost too elegant to be true, but the economics are really quite straightforward. If you've heard the term virtual power plant, or VPP, it's referring to this whole process, but it's entirely automated by the energy retailer. They automatically set your battery to export and import when it makes the most sense. You can also do all of this manually, which is what I'm planning for my setup. A little more on that down the line. Eventually, this kind of responsive grid will help reduce the fossil fuels required to keep homes powered, and in the meantime, it means essentially free energy for early adopters of home battery technology, particularly if you have a sizable solar array and battery. Honestly, my thoughts initially are all very positive, with a couple of things I want to discuss. The app is clearly designed with simplicity in mind. It's clean, it's polished, and it does a good job of surfacing the information most people will actually care about. How much you're generating, how much you're storing, what you're using. Very Apple-esque in its approach. I will say that it does rely on the cloud to operate, which allows you to check your stats remotely, which is nice. But if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you'll know that this isn't my favorite architecture for a device I'm relying on in my home, and would normally be a deal breaker. For most people, this probably doesn't matter at all. But for me, one of the first things I'll be doing is setting up a local Modbus connection over IP into Home Assistant, which will give me full local control and a lot more granularity than the app exposes. To their credit, Anker has released their entire Modbus protocol for people to use for whatever they'd like, so I appreciate that. I'd love to see an official local Home Assistant integration, but for now, Modbus seems like the best way to go. A video on setting all of that up is coming. Now, on pricing, I want to be very transparent. Anker provided the battery system and the installation of just the battery as part of our sponsorship arrangement. So cost wasn't a factor in our decision the way it would be for most people. For most households, the payback period for a system like this would still be quite long. But that assumes energy prices stay flat, which, given the trajectory of the last few years and recent developments somewhere between the Far and Near East, feels like a fairly conservative assumption. Though the battery rebates will be reduced for large systems on the 1st of May 2026, the rebate is still pretty substantial. Do the math for yourself and remember that the sooner you get a system, the sooner it can start paying for itself. And if you really want to get the most out of the subsidies, the Anker system's capacity steps mean you can match the rebate levels perfectly, which means you're getting the best possible rebate to capacity ratio. Another handy little feature is that my C1000 Gen 2, that little portable power station in my 3D printing rack, also appears in the same Anker app, so I can control the charging of both batteries from one place. A great feature if you have a portable power station in your car, caravan, or camping setup. It's also worth remembering that a battery system like this gives you just a bit more control over another thing we rely really heavily on these days. At the time I'm recording this video, the system is installed, but still waiting on its sort of grid connection inspection. That's a normal part of the process here in Victoria and not specific to Anker or our installer. So in a few weeks, once everything is online and we've had a chance to actually live with it, I'll be doing a follow-up video with our sort of impressions of the system in action. After that, I'm planning to do a full Home Assistant integration video, getting the Modbus connection set up, pulling live data into dashboards, and building out some automations to make the whole system work smarter. And then this time next year, I'm going to come back and do a proper 12-month review with some real data so you can see whether all this was actually worth it, rather than just taking my word for it now. I've got some interesting ideas for automations already to make the most of it. Things like automating export to the grid myself, charging the battery from the grid myself during free energy windows, and even automating air conditioning and heating to store excess energy in the form of heat or cold. If you have any other ideas for automations, let me know in the comments below. If this video has got you thinking about solar and battery storage, the best first step is to get a quote organized as soon as possible. Anker have a network of accredited installers that they're expanding constantly, and there's a link in the description to get in touch and find someone in your area. If you have any specific questions about the system or any advice for optimizing the system, let me know. I'm keen to get the most out of it. If you like this video, leave it a like. If not, let me know why. As always, thanks a lot for watching. I'll catch you next time.